Thank you very much, Mr. Choi. I have a speech actually, but I will not read it. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, let me start by expressing my gratitude to ISEAS, Yusof Institute. I think it's Yusof Ishak Institute of the Institute of ASEAN Studies. Well, Excellencies, ambassadors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm deeply honored today to be invited to deliver this keynote address on a very important topic, and that is ASEAN's role and relevance in a troubled world. So I think that the title here is indeed very much very catchy. But again, let me say that I've been thinking through, as my staff draft the speech for me, but I've been looking at it and then trying to look at the more of what actually happening on the ground rather than what is being thinking out there, what actually is happening. In fact, for the first 9 months of my term that I've been working and engaging with the leaders, but also the ministers, I always say that I'm very much biased because my background more political background, foreign affairs. But the way we work now, of course, we cut across the three pillars, all the sectors and three pillars of the ASEAN community. I want to also say thank you very much to the leadership of ISEAS here, because I always admiring that ISEAS is really truly a regional intellectual hub that has been playing a crucial role over so many years and decades, and that's why I have tremendous respect and admiration for ISEAS. And I know it's not easy, but to be able to continue to build up over time and to really have a very influential role in this region. I have a lot of respect for think tank because in the government sector, we are always too busy. I always say we're busy putting fires, where in the think tank sector, you have a lot of time, luxury time, to think through and to really frame issues in a way easy to understand. But let me come back to the topic that I've been asked to address. Well, the world is fragmented, yes, but it's not for the first time. You know, it has been there, looking at just a quick sketch of how we see the world today. The world at the end of the Cold War, you have a multilateralism that established by US and US allies. So you see the first set of multilateralism in the world during the Cold War. Then, of course, fast-tracked it to the end of the Cold War. Another multilateralism we see at the end of the Cold War. Then after that, of course, multilateralism during a period where we had to fight terrorism, all right? The whole world, member states were very much involved in combating terrorism. Then after that, I'm shifting forward now to more recently, we talk about the financial crisis and then the pandemic. But of course, what we have seen also is that the rise of or the establishment of new institutions that were not there before. And including, for example, you have BRICS, AIIB, among others that really coming up. Also NAM, the question of NAM, for example, was there earlier, but NAM now somewhat is disappearing from the global order, more or less. Of course, still there and still somewhat relevant, but become less and less. And where are we now? In fact, you see a fragmented world. Is it really fragmented, or is it more or less a readjustment? The whole global order is being readjusted, reset, more or less, with the same old rules, or maybe new rules being established. These are what we see now being determined, of course, by a number of factors. The pandemic, of course, one of the factors. the what you call Ukraine-Russian crisis, right? That's another factor. IT, AI, and of course also the rise of the states that are pursuing nuclear weapons. More or less, they are not recognized. There's a lot of unrecognized nuclear weapon states out there, including North Korea, for example. And of course, this is something that we're now seeing in Southeast Asia. We want the 5 nuclear weapon states to recognize the Sunfast Treaty and to accede to it. But of course, at a time when you have Russia trying to put a nuclear option on the table, and North Korea is more determined than ever to build up their nuclear arsenals. So this is, I think, the world where we are right now. And of course, I'm painting a very sketchy, superficial global order here, but and then of course you see the rise of what we call the multilaterals, right? It's not the first time, it's been there before, whether in these regions or in other parts of the world, and whether for political convenience or security alliance or whatever purpose, but they've been there. I think this is something we see, and that's why we're looking at from academic. James Rosenau mentioned this back when he put in his book on basically turbulence in world politics back in the early 1990s. We already could foresee it was coming. But what's important is that all of this is that we should not forget the multinational corporations increasingly become even more powerful, right, with more resources than a lot of many nation states. So how do we factor all of this in? And how do we looking at ASEAN? The way I look at ASEAN is that the way ASEAN is working right now at 4 levels. That's how we're operating. And then operating simultaneously, 4 levels. One, of course, at the bilateral level. When I talk bilateral level, I mean ASEAN plus 1, ASEAN US, ASEAN China, ASEAN Japan, ASEAN India, and so forth and so forth. That's at the bilateral level. But also at the bilateral level, we talk about each ASEAN member state engaging with other dialogue partners with ASEAN or external partners, interacting at the same time also. So you see all this going on, whether for political purposes, for defense purposes, for trade, investment, economic, all of that. They're working constantly. That's what we see is happening. And of course, we consider this the building blocks of the ASEAN community. At another level, we talk about sub-regional level, okay? We have the the Great Mekong sub-region, GMS. You have Bermuda, mainland versus maritime. But we should not be thinking like that. And I want to put a footnote to this. I have reminded our colleagues that in ASEAN, we don't have a bloc within a bloc. We don't have big brothers or big sisters. And we don't have the core group, okay? ASEAN is ASEAN, as it is. 10 member states working together on equal footing. Yes. So coming back to sub-regional level, of course, we see in this sub-regional levels being the key building blocks of the ASEAN community. The priority, of course, is to ensure that the sub-regional grouping focus on poverty reduction, focusing on development, building prosperity. So all of this, that's what we see, what's happening. Like, for example, the GMS. The Great Mekong sub-region used to be the bedrock of conflict, but today is one of the growth centers, sub-regional growth centers of the world. Look at the level of economic development, but also the economic growth rates is quite high. The same thing being regarded. By having this sub-regional, we also can attract a lot of investment into this sub-regional arrangements. So that's how ASEAN works. In the case of GMS, you have a lot of interest from dialogue partner countries. You have a different arrangement. For example, with India, you have the Mekong Ganga Cooperation, MGC. With China, you have Lanchan Mekong Cooperation. With Korea, then you have Mekong Korea, Mekong Japan, Global Mekong Initiative with the US, for example. So there's a lot of arrangements there that work simultaneously. So that's at the sub-regional level. Then at the regional level, that's where ASEAN really closely engaging constantly. And the way ASEAN works is that people tend to think that, well, ASEAN only, every ASEAN member state would play the role of chairmanship and rotate it annually. It's true. But there are much more than that. The way ASEAN has been working. We have also what's called the role of country coordinatorship. This is where all the ASEAN member states take turns to coordinate our cooperation, our relations, our partnership with those dialogue partners. Well, the Secretariat also played the role of coordinatorship to coordinate with sectoral dialogue partners and development partners. And of course, the numbers keep increasing now also. So at that level, that's where we play this role. But in addition, each country that assumes chairmanship cannot chair all the sectoral bodies. That's where ASEAN also have what we call the chairmanship of the sectoral bodies. Okay, for example, you have the defense sector, ADMM, ADM Plus, right? This, of course, one that we will more or less align with the chairmanship. But then you have other sectors like education, forestry. In this case, forestry, for example, still under in Malaysian chairmanship. That's why later this week, Santa Marta will be meeting in Kuala Lumpur. So the different sector will be coordinated, will be chaired by the different ASEAN member states. So all of that working constantly. And at the regional level is that there are two things that are working constantly. One, among ASEAN member states across the different sectors, the different pillars. Also between ASEAN and the external partners, whether in the framework of ASEAN Plus One, ASEAN Plus Three, or the East Asia Summit, or ADMM, or the ASEAN Region Forum. So at that level, that constantly we're working. At the moment, we have roughly almost 2,000 meetings per year. And you would ask, why so many meetings? Well, because we're doing a lot of negotiations. Just look at DEFA, the Digital Economy Framework Agreement negotiation. That would entail many negotiations over so many days and months. I'm sure before we could finalize this agreement, maybe by 2025. So it's not for the sake of meetings, but there's a lot of issues that we've been working, trying to harmonize, coordinate, right, standardize a lot of things, from legal sector, for example, to the immigration issue, to counterterrorism, to drugs matters. So I think basically practically from A to Z. That's how we work constantly. And of course, the Secretariat is an institution that's been strengthened already to coordinate also, to monitor, to institutionalize, to ensure that what has transpired at the various meetings from year to year, that everything's built up over time. And that's the role of the Secretariat, and of course, to also provide capacity building, but also to work directly with the external partners to ensure that where member states do not directly involve, that's the role of the Secretariat will be involved. Now, at the fourth level will be at the global and international level. That's where ASEAN engaging with the UN, for example, the EU and other regional and global institutions. We have projects that we work with World Bank. We have activity with OECD, for example. So cut across a wide range of activities, programs, but also institutions to really spread out. But two things I want to mention that before I come back to addressing the role and relevance. Today, ASEAN has 54 high contracting parties to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia, which is known as TAC. Out of 54, 44 are non-ASEAN. The last three countries we have that have acceded to TAC are Kuwait, Panama, and Serbia. With these three countries come on board, what we have today is that the TAC has now reached all the geographical footprints of the global community. So with Panama, basically this is in South America. Kuwait is the last member of the Gulf Cooperation Council to exceed the TAC, and with Serbia is the first country in the Balkans that also exceeded the TAC. And you might wonder why, how important is the TAC? Well, TAC is basically the key instrument of ASEAN that calls for the conduct for interstate relations, but also for friendly cooperation. That's the first document, basically saying that we have to resolve our differences peacefully by diplomacy. We have to renounce the use of force or the threat of use of force. Also, we have to work together through the interstate relations. Particularly, this is the first document before we open the door for practical cooperations. So anything we do, we have to start with TAC. This is the key before we start the practical areas of cooperation. And I think this TAC is growing. And I want to say that the first country, non-ASEAN country that exceeded TAC was China. Some 30 years ago, China knocked on the door and was willingly to exceed the TAC. And that's, of course, today, of course, that's what we see. We have more countries now in the queue to sign up to the TAC. Second, I think we do not know properly is that today we have so many of what's called the ASEAN committees in 30 countries and international organizations, placing around the world in major capitals, whether in Washington, D.C., in Tokyo, Beijing, London, Moscow, Paris. All of this, they're comprising basically the ambassadors of ASEAN member states, but based in those respective capitals, and they constitute the ASEAN Committee in 30 countries and international organizations. And they play a very important role, particularly to disseminate information on ASEAN, to engage in ASEAN public diplomacy, to carry out a lot of activities there on behalf of ASEAN. So sometimes we don't know that all of this being working silently. And there's a lot of ASEAN meetings that are not in the media. They basically negotiations off cameras and a lot of activities related. So I just want to underline those issues, okay? Now let me briefly touch, because I don't have a lot of time, but I just want to mention that the role and relevance, because I've been asked to focus on these two aspects. I think by just introducing some of the issues just now, the roles are very clear. What's the role of ASEAN? Well, one, of course, is to maintain peace, stability, and security in this region. And how we do that? How do we do that? Well, by through the convening of various meetings, what we call the cultural dialogue, having cultural dialogue, and having consultations, regular consultations among the players. All right, this could be major powers, could be countries in the region. Basically, they are all our partners and friends. And over the years, these partners and friends, they have moved up in terms of the relationship and partnership, and that's why we classified them into three categories, whether they call it dialogue partners, sectoral dialogue partners, and development partners. And of course, at the for the development partners, we have them also classified as just dialogue partners, like UK, for example, right now is the newest member, and those who have been there for some time, that work together for quite some time, would be called the strategic partner. In the case of Canada, Canada was with ASEAN for a very long time, but only at the summit early this month that the partnership was upgraded to strategic partner. And then, of course, the last one will be comprehensive strategic partners or partnership. In the case of US, for example, Australia, India, China, and soon to be in December this year would be Japan. Next year we expect to have the Republic of Korea. So this is really meaning that the relationship really has been substantial over the decades, and that's how we work together and how we classify our partnership. So that's one I want to say. That's and of course all the role, of course, coming back is in peace, stability, and security is really one of the key priorities. We don't take peace for granted now. You can see that our leaders actively, our ministers actively promoting dialogue and consultations and trying to resolve differences through negotiations, through discussions, through the various mechanisms that were set up over decades now, and some are still new. In the case of, say, ASEAN China, there's probably one of the most extensive mechanisms that we have set up bilateral between ASEAN and China, covering a wide range of sectors. Also, there's other mechanisms that we have through the ASEAN Center, what we call the ASEAN Centers. Say in the case with Japan, ASEAN Japan Center, ASEAN Korea Center, ASEAN China Center. Soon we will have the ASEAN US Center in Washington, D.C. to be set up also. There is agreement to move forward on this. I think we're gonna finalize before too long. I think the US is working on this. So again, this is also part of the mechanism role. The idea is to promote understanding, mutual respect. So I think this is a very important part. Second role, of course, I'm talking about the role of building prosperity. I mentioned about peace. Peace, what we have in the past belong to the past. What we need to do today is to ensure that we have long-term peace in the future. The same thing for prosperity. For prosperity is that what we have achieved up to now in the region is incredible. It's a lot of achievement. But they can be, this prosperity could be gone very rapidly. In today's rapid changing world, and that's why it is the wisdom of the leaders of ASEAN to continue to focus on building the prosperity agenda for the ASEAN people, ASEAN citizens. And that's why it's very important for the role of ASEAN to continue to make sure that this region remains relevant, the word relevant coming up, to the business community, the investors, private sectors, companies from outside the region to continue to invest in doing business in ASEAN, to create jobs for ASEAN citizens, to involve in training program, among other things. So I think this is quite important for us in terms of how we want to carry on this prosperity agenda forward. I think this is something that the role of ASEAN continue to do. Also, I would say the role of ASEAN is now more prominent than ever before, as we've seen the leaders now taking a more practical approach into protecting the planet. Okay, the planet become even much fragile, more urgent than ever before, because ASEAN is a region very much prone to natural disasters. And I can say the Philippines, one of our frontline states, always bombarded with typhoons, right, year after year. But of course, other ASEAN member states too that have been suffering. Of course, Myanmar recently suffered the Cyclone Mocha, tsunami, right, and volcano in the case of Philippines, in the case of Indonesia. So again, the planet agenda is very important for ASEAN. We have our own commitment, right, to the COP28. I think it's very clear that's why leaders, for example, adopted the EV ecosystem, because we want to have the electric cars. I think Indonesia pushing very hard at this. Initially, I remember member state questioned why we have this EV ecosystem now, you know. But I think it was clear it was a political decision that was made to ensure that we are on the right track. The same thing with clean energy, right? One thing I want to talk a little bit about clean energy is that it's the role of ASEAN now trying to open the door, welcome investors to invest in the clean energy. Today, there are more projects in terms of hydro, wind, solar, right? This already see cut across the entire ASEAN region, even also turning waste into energy. It's there also. I think it's important for for ASEAN and ASEAN member states to really continue to pursue this path of what we call the green economy, energy transition, to ensure that the region will be sustainable. Sustainability has been the key buzzword for ASEAN for some time already. And that's why we set up the ASEAN Center for Sustainability and Dialogue. In Thailand, for example, I just want to mention briefly about how important all the ASEAN centers that have been set up in all the ASEAN member states. These are the building blocks of the ASEAN community. They play their own role, respective role. In the case of Indonesia, we have the AHA Center focused on assisting, providing humanitarian assistance, but also assistance to the countries, member states that have been affected by natural disaster. That's why this agreement that has been coming up, that has been implementing for 20 years already, and to reach a point that we have one ASEAN, one response. And for the first time this year, I want to put a footnote that the fund has been open. Before, we were very restricted for only member states to contribute. Now it's open to the public also, that they can contribute to this fund, and it will be supporting any member state that have been affected by natural disaster. So that's why this important agenda of protecting the planet for ASEAN is very critical. And this is something I want to mention, the role here. Let me fast forward on to relevance, how relevant is ASEAN. I cannot think that, can you imagine if we don't have ASEAN? Okay, how about a citizen of 10 countries? They're going to have visa requirements, right? You want to go from Cambodia to Singapore, or maybe Philippines to Indonesia, we would require visas cutting across the ASEAN zone. But because of this arrangement, ASEAN citizens soon will be 700 million. No need to have visas. Just book your flights, get on the plane, that's it. So the movement of people here has been incredible, but we take it for granted, you know. And how relevant? We have an ASEAN agreement. I talk about this is that we don't know is that this agreement is for the ASEAN citizens. If ASEAN citizens were to be, say, somewhere in Africa, and conflicts were to erupt, a citizen of, say, Myanmar, that they do not have embassy there, then the embassy ASEAN member state that based in that particular country can offer assistance automatically to the ASEAN citizen from Myanmar, for example. This kind of arrangement we have, how relevant it is, you see, to the ASEAN citizens. But also today, look at one investor looking at where they want to put their investment. They look at the globe and see where I will put my investment. Why they come to the region? Because they believe that ASEAN will become a single market. Okay, of course, there's a lot of what we call complaints here and there, but ASEAN increasingly become moving toward a single market. As a good example, if a Toyota were to be manufactured, say, in somewhere outside the region, say in India, and were to be imported into one of the member states, say in the case of Cambodia, this car would to be paid tax 200%. But if this Toyota being manufactured in Thailand, it would import into Cambodia, there'll be no tax, you see. A very minimal, maybe just a transaction tax, you see. That's how relevant it is. And that's why this EV cars production, right? EV production now, there's a lot of traction now. Looking at Korea, look at Japan, look at China, they start to invest more in the region because they want to take advantage of this market, you see. Of course, the market still have more work to do for ASEAN, but increasingly we see that this has become more relevant because the only way to attract, particularly as investors, they relocate their production bases, right? They have to look for a place where it's conducive for their businesses. So this is, I think, is the leaders have seen that we have to make our region relevant to the business community so that they will continue to invest in ASEAN. I think in terms of the economic there, but also how relevant we are, because right now we have countries want to upgrade their formal relationship with ASEAN. Some want to have a formal, say, dialogue partnership. Some want to join AOF, others want to join the ISEAS Summit. I think there's a long queues here and there. Why are they requesting to be part of ASEAN? Because in my view, that they see that it is relevant to them. It is in their interest to be affiliated, to be working with ASEAN. Okay? And I think become even more relevant today is that in the rising geopolitical tensions, it's important for ASEAN to play its role as an honor peace broker, to use the ASEAN platforms, whether they participate in ASEAN-led meetings or they have their own bilateral meetings on the sidelines every time we meet. This makes ASEAN become even more relevant there, okay? And also looking at our contributions to the UN peacekeeping operations around the world, increasingly we've seen also our ASEAN blue helmets being deployed, including women also, okay? This is the role also under the UN peacekeeping operations. So you've seen that. Of course, there's a lot of discussion now whether ASEAN one day should set up a regional peacekeeping center. That's another matter. But I think what's important is that ASEAN increasingly becomes very active in global affairs, where we talk about PKO, we talk about how we engage with the UN on a wide range of issues. But I think to sum up, because I want to sum up a little bit here, is that moving forward, the way we see the region, the world, is that ASEAN will become increasingly even more relevant in terms of how to keep this region at peace. That's number one. Number two, I think ASEAN become increasingly a place for investment. I have been speaking in the first 9 months of my term here. I met with Japanese investor, Korean investor, Chinese investor, even investor from the European Union, for example, also. And I can say that they want to engage with ASEAN. They want to do more business. Even UK, I think a recent survey has been done that British investor, they prefer to invest in ASEAN. I think some 6-8%, according to the survey. They prefer to invest in ASEAN. This, I think, an indication of the relevance that we have. Now, to sum up, what I want to say is that first is that ASEAN has chosen this principle of engagement, the policy of engagement, rather than isolation. That's what we do. We have been engaging with all the external partners that choose to engage with us. We want to stay very much engaging with them. ASEAN has been choosing the position of cooperation rather than confrontation. I think we have no one to confront with. Always we talk about practical cooperations, what more can be done. ASEAN seeks inclusion rather than exclusion. I think look at all the way we do things is that we have always been very inclusive. I think we also seek collaboration rather than containment. One thing is clear, I think the role of ASEAN has always been acting as a centripetal force, a force that brings everyone to the center for the common goals, for the shared interests. I think the way ASEAN has been working the past 56 years, always the work of diplomacy, not force. I think diplomacy has been the hallmark of ASEAN way of doing things, dialogue, consultations. I think we have been engaging in trust building, okay, by being very open, very transparent, inclusive. I think the goal is to build trust, cutting across the different sectors, of course, also all the different players. Finally, I just want to say that ASEAN is not a reactive organization. And that's why the ASEAN leaders tasked the Highlight Task Force on ASEAN Community Vision post-2025 to come up with a new vision. And today we have already the draft ready already, being noted by the leaders, and that is ASEAN Community Vision 2045. So 20 years down the road after 2025. This is for the very first time in 56 years of ASEAN existence that ASEAN has the longest vision ever to be endorsed officially in 2025 during Malaysian Championship of ASEAN. So with that, thank you very much. I look forward to a very engaging discussion. Thank you.